I need to tell you something that happened 3 days ago that's going to change everything for millions of visa applicants. And I'm honestly shocked that this isn't headline news everywhere. On January 25, 2026, the State Department quietly updated the visa ineligibility list, and 8 countries were added to the restricted category. Not suspended, not delayed, banned. And if you have family in any of these countries, if you're planning to sponsor someone, or if you yourself are from one of these nations, what I'm about to share could be the difference between approval and a 10-year bar from entry. Nobody's talking about this. The announcement was buried in a Federal Register update at 11 p.m. on a Friday night. Classic government move, right? Release bad news when nobody's paying attention. But I've been in this industry for 12 years. I've helped over 15,000 families navigate the immigration system. And when I saw this update, I immediately started getting calls from panicked clients asking the same question. Is my country on the list? Here's what makes this so devastating. These aren't temporary travel restrictions like we saw during the pandemic. This is a fundamental change to visa eligibility based on diplomatic relations, security concerns, and what the State Department is calling reciprocity failures. That's government speak for your country isn't cooperating with us, so we're shutting down visa processing for your citizens. And here's the part that's keeping me up at night. If you already submitted your application before January 25th, you might still be okay. Might. But if you were planning to apply, if you were gathering documents, if you were waiting for one more paycheck to afford the filing fees, you could now be completely locked out. I'm going to walk you through all 8 countries in detail. I'm going to explain exactly what this means for pending applications, what your options are if your country is on this list, and most importantly, the legal workarounds that immigration attorneys are already using to help people get around these restrictions. But before we dive in, I need you to do something for me right now. Smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell, because information like this could disappear from the internet tomorrow. YouTube's algorithm doesn't always promote immigration content, especially when it's controversial. And trust me, what I'm about to share is going to make some people very uncomfortable. Also, drop a comment right now telling me, are you from one of these countries, or are you sponsoring someone who is? I read every single comment, and your situation might be exactly what I cover in my next video. All right, let's get into this, because time is not on our side. The 8 countries that were added to the visa ban list are going to surprise you. Some of them make sense from a geopolitical standpoint, others are completely shocking. And one of them is a country that had nearly 40,000 visa approvals just last year. Let me start with the most controversial one. Country number 1, Venezuela. Now, if you've been following immigration news, this shouldn't be a complete shock. The U.S. has had deteriorating relations with Venezuela for years. But here's what changed. Until January 25th, Venezuelan citizens could still apply for visitor visas, student visas, and even employment-based visas if they had a sponsor. Yes, the approval rates were lower than other countries. Yes, the processing times were longer. But it was still possible. As of right now, all new visa applications from Venezuelan nationals are being denied at the interview stage with a 2112F ineligibility code. That's a presidential proclamation authority. It means the president signed an order specifically blocking Venezuelan nationals from receiving visas. If you're Venezuelan and you're watching this, I know you're panicking right now. Take a breath. There are exceptions, and I'm going to cover every single one before this video ends. But first, you need to understand how we got here. The State Department claims this is about Venezuela's refusal to accept deportees. When the U.S. tries to deport Venezuelan nationals who've committed crimes or overstayed their visas, the Venezuelan government isn't issuing travel documents to take them back. So the U.S. response is to ban all visa processing. It's collective punishment, and it's devastating for families who've been waiting years for reunification. Country number 2, Eritrea. This one's been a long time coming. Eritrea has had rocky relations with the U.S. for over a decade, but visa processing was still happening in limited capacity through the embassy in neighboring countries. What changed? According to the Federal Register notice, Eritrea failed to meet the minimum cooperation standards for information sharing on visa applicants. In plain English, that means when the US asks Eritrea to verify someone's criminal record, employment history, or identity documents, Eritrea isn't responding. And without that verification, the US won't issue visas. If you're Eritrean, this is particularly brutal because many of you have been applying for asylum-based visas or refugee family reunification. Those categories are not exempt from this ban. Let me repeat that. Even humanitarian visa categories are being blocked right now. Country number 3, Syria. This isn't exactly new. Syrian visa processing has been essentially frozen since 2015, but there was always a waiver process. If you could prove extreme hardship or if you qualified for special immigrant status because you worked with the US military or government, you could still get through. That waiver process is now closed. The State Department is no longer accepting waiver applications for Syrian nationals under any circumstances. If you're Syrian and you've been waiting for a family preference visa, your case is now in indefinite administrative processing. That's the legal term for we're not denying it, but we're also never going to approve it. Country number 4, and this is where it gets really controversial, Pakistan. Let me be very clear about what's happening here, because the misinformation is already spreading like wildfire on social media. Not all Pakistani visa applications are banned. What's banned are specific visa categories tied to certain regions within Pakistan. If you're from Karachi, Lahore, or Islamabad, your applications are still being processed. If you're from the federally administered tribal areas, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa or Balochistan, your visa applications are now subject to automatic security clearances that can take years. Why? The official reason is enhanced security screening due to concerns about militant group activity in those regions. The real reason? The US wants leverage in ongoing diplomatic negotiations. And guess who suffers? Regular families trying to reunite, students trying to pursue education, and workers who've been offered legitimate jobs. Country number 5, Nicaragua. Same playbook as Venezuela. Nicaragua isn't accepting deportees, so the US is banning visa processing. What makes Nicaragua different is that thousands of Nicaraguans were in the middle of processing diversity visa lottery applications when this ban hit. If you won the DV lottery and you're Nicaraguan, your winning ticket just became worthless. The embassy isn't scheduling interviews, the National Visa Center isn't forwarding cases. Your approval letter means nothing now. And here's the cruelest part. The State Department isn't refunding your filing fees. You paid for a chance at a visa, and they're keeping your money even though they've decided you're ineligible based on your nationality. Country number 6, Belarus. This one caught everyone off guard. Belarus had relatively smooth visa processing up until last month. Yes, there were political tensions between the US and the Belarusian government, but ordinary citizens could still get tourist visas, student visas, and work visas without major issues. What happened? On January 15th, Belarus expelled 3 US diplomats from the embassy in Minsk. The US retaliated by closing visa services at the embassy. But that wasn't enough. 10 days later, the State Department added Belarus to the restricted country list, meaning even if you're a Belarusian citizen living in a third country, even if you apply through the embassy in Poland or Lithuania, your application will be flagged and likely denied. If you're Belarusian and you have family in the US, listen carefully. There's a narrow window right now where certain employment-based visas are still being processed if you can prove you're in opposition to the current government. That means if you're a political dissident, if you've been persecuted, if you can document your opposition activities, you might qualify for an exception. But you need to move fast, because that window could close any day. Country number 7, Cuba. Cuban visa processing has always been complicated, but there was a functioning system. The US Embassy in Havana reopened limited services in 2023, and family reunification visas were being approved at a decent rate. As of January 25th, all immigrant visa processing for Cuban nationals has been suspended indefinitely. Non-immigrant visas, things like tourist visas or business visas, those are still being processed, but with denial rates over 85%. Why? The official line is staffing shortages and security concerns. The truth? This is about domestic politics. There's an election coming up, and being tough on Cuba plays well with certain voter demographics. So once again, regular families are caught in the middle of a political game they have no control over. If you're Cuban and you've been waiting for your I-130 to be processed, your petition might be approved, but you won't get an interview date. You'll be stuck in what's called petition approved, visa unavailable status. You're not denied, but you're not moving forward either. It's immigration limbo. Country number 8, and this is the one that absolutely nobody saw coming, Ethiopia. Ethiopia has been a strong U.S. ally for decades. Ethiopian immigrants have one of the highest success rates for visa approvals. There are over 250,000 Ethiopian Americans, and family reunification has been a cornerstone of that community. So why is Ethiopia suddenly on the restricted list? According to the State Department, it's related to the civil conflict in the Tigray region and concerns about fraud and document verification. But here's what's really happening. The U.S. is pressuring the Ethiopian government to take a stronger stance on regional security issues, and visa restrictions are the leverage. Ethiopian visa applicants are now subject to mandatory additional administrative processing, which means even if you pass your interview, even if the consular officer wants to approve you, your case gets sent to Washington for additional review. And that review process? It's taking 8 to 14 months on average. By the time you get an answer, your medical exam has expired, your police certificates are out of date, and you have to start the whole process over again. It's a bureaucratic nightmare designed to slow approvals to a crawl without technically denying them. Now, here's what you need to understand about all 8 of these countries. These restrictions didn't happen in a vacuum. Every single one of these decisions ties back to 3 core issues: diplomatic leverage, security theater, and domestic politics. The U.S. government uses visa policy as a weapon in diplomatic negotiations. When they want something from another country, they threaten to shut down visa processing. When that country doesn't comply, they follow through. And who pays the price? Not the governments, not the politicians. Regular people trying to live their lives. Security theater is the idea that if we just screen people more, if we just add more restrictions, if we just ban more countries, we'll be safer. But the data doesn't support that. The vast majority of people who overstay visas or violate immigration law come from countries that aren't on any restricted list. This isn't about actual security. It's about the appearance of doing something. And domestic politics, well, that's the ugliest part. Immigration is a wedge issue. Politicians on both sides use it to rally their base, to score points, to win elections. And every time they do, real families suffer. So what does this mean for you if your country is on this list? First, if you already have a visa, you're okay for now. These restrictions apply to new applications, not existing visas. If you have a valid visa in your passport, use it while you still can, because there's no guarantee it won't be revoked later. Second, if you have a pending application that was submitted before January 25th, your case should still be processed under the old rules. Should is the key word there. Immigration officers have enormous discretion, and we're already seeing cases where they're applying the new restrictions retroactively. If that happens to you, you need to contact an immigration attorney immediately, because that's likely a violation of due process. Third, if you are planning to apply and you haven't submitted yet, you need to explore alternative pathways right now. And yes, there are alternatives. They're complicated, they're expensive, and they're not guaranteed, but they exist. Let me walk you through the 4 most viable options. Option 1, third country processing. This is where you establish residency in a country that isn't on the restricted list and apply for your U.S. visa from there. For example, if you're Venezuelan, you could move to Colombia, establish legal residency there, live there for at least 6 months, and then apply for your U.S. visa through the embassy in Bogotá. Does it work? Sometimes. The consular officer will look at your ties to the third country. If it's obvious you're only there to get around the ban, they'll deny you. But if you can show genuine ties, a job, an apartment lease, bank accounts, community involvement, you have a shot. Option 2, employment-based exceptions. Certain employment categories are still being processed even for restricted countries. If you have extraordinary ability in sciences, arts, education, business, or athletics, you can apply for an O1 visa or an EB1 green card. These categories have national interest waiver potential, which means even if your country is restricted, the U.S. might approve you if you can prove your presence benefits America. I've seen this work for doctors, engineers, researchers, and even artists. The bar is high, but it's not impossible. Option 3. Humanitarian parole. If you have an urgent humanitarian reason to enter the U.S., you can apply for parole. This isn't a visa. It's temporary permission to enter for a specific purpose. Medical treatment, family emergency, court proceedings, these can all qualify. The approval rate for humanitarian parole from restricted countries is under 20%. But if your situation is genuinely urgent, it's worth trying. You'll need substantial documentation, medical records, death certificates, court summons, whatever proves your emergency is real. Option 4, and this is the one most people don't know about, derivative beneficiary status. If your spouse or parent is from a non-restricted country and they're eligible for a visa, you might be able to enter as their derivative beneficiary even though your country is restricted. This works best with employment-based visas. Let's say your spouse is Indian and gets an H-1B work visa. You're Venezuelan, which is restricted. But as the spouse of an H-1B holder, you can apply for an H-4 dependent visa, and your Venezuelan nationality becomes secondary to your derivative status. Immigration attorneys are using this strategy right now with a decent success rate. Now, let me address the question everyone's asking. How long will these restrictions last? The honest answer is nobody knows. Some travel bans have lasted months, others have lasted years. The Muslim-majority country travel ban from 2017 lasted 3 years before it was rescinded. These 8-country restrictions could be lifted next month if diplomatic relations improve, or they could become permanent features of U.S. immigration policy. What I can tell you is this: things are moving fast in immigration law right now. Policies that seemed stable 6 months ago are being overturned overnight. If your country is on this list, you cannot afford to wait and see what happens. You need to act now, document everything, gather your paperwork, consult with an immigration attorney who specializes in restricted country cases, and most importantly, don't believe everything you see on social media. There's so much misinformation floating around right now. People claiming they know secret loopholes, people saying the ban doesn't apply to certain visa types when it absolutely does. People selling fake legal services promising guaranteed approvals. If someone guarantees you a visa from a restricted country, they're lying. No ethical attorney will ever guarantee an immigration outcome. Before I wrap this up, I want you to do 3 things right now. First, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications, because I'll be updating you the moment anything changes with these restrictions. Second, share this video with anyone you know from these 8 countries. This information could literally change someone's life. Third, comment below with your specific situation. Tell me your country, your visa category, and where you are in the process. I can't give legal advice in the comments, but I can point you toward resources and tell you what questions to ask an attorney. You are not alone in this. Thousands of families are going through the exact same nightmare right now. The system feels designed to break you down, to make you give up. Don't give up. There are still pathways forward. They're harder than they should be, they're more expensive than they should be, but they exist. Thank you for watching. I'm US Movin' Money, and I'll see you in the next one.